Don't know if I'm live yet or not. I'm supposed to be live. I am. I'm supposed to be live. Don't know if I'm live yet or not. Okay, so I can hear me, but I can't see me. Interesting. So I can hear me, but I can't see me. Interesting. Ah, there I am. I'm not sure why I had to get out of it and go back in before it would show me, but there it is. Hello everyone. Welcome class to Kitchen 101, where we teach you how to think like a chef. How to cook, not what to cook. Giving you the knowledge and comfort you're going to need to create and modify recipes to fit your chosen way of eating and lifestyle. Today we're going to discuss how to pick out good coffee. So go ahead and grab yourself a pen, paper, and a try that again, a pen and paper and a refreshing beverage, because I'm Professor Kitchen and class is in session. And I forgot to hit the button. I still didn't hit the button. Alright, woo, that was kind of starting off on the rocky, wasn't it? Well, welcome class, and we're having another live stream. I'm kind of liking these live streams. I hope you do too, trying to just get my head kind of wrapped around all this stuff. But we're going to have, instead of having a normal release today, we're going to do this live stream, and we're going to talk about how to pick your own coffee. Most people just go to the grocery store and they grab whatever's on the shelf, maybe what they were raised on, something in a big red or blue tin, and they don't even consider what they're drinking. Now they'll go down to Starbucks and they're going to pay them $5 for hyper sweetened burnt coffee, but at home they're just going to make themselves garbage. But let's change that. Let's change that. I'm going to teach you how today. First thing, before we start, if you enjoy this class, please go ahead and click the like button. And if you want more classes like this and more information, please click the subscribe button and be sure to click the bell icon so you can get notified every time I release a new class. Now, I got my list right here and ready to go through it all. Let's see. So let's talk about what to look for when you're going into your store or you're going into your coffee shop and you're looking at their coffee. What should you be looking for? Well, first of all, if you're going into a coffee shop, you're like steps above people who go to the grocery store. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, we're looking at either one, and we're going to need to figure out which one is good coffee. So the first thing you want to look at, and I've got, before I start, I've got some counterculture. Let's see if you all can see that. Some counterculture coffee right here that I'm using an example. I couldn't get this to focus earlier. I hope I'll be able to during this live stream, but I doubt it. At least y'all can, looks like y'all can see that pretty well. Anyway, this one we're going to use as an example. It has most of the items on here. So the first thing you're going to want to look for, number one, is you're going to want to make sure that it's whole bean. Don't go for the ground stuff. Seriously. Whole bean. Yeah, I know the ground stuff's easy and the stuff in the pods is easy, but trust me, it's garbage. It's flat, it's stale. They don't use good beans to do it with. They use cheap beans because they know it's going to go stale. And so all they do is they add chemical flavoring in afterwards to try and make it taste better. You don't want any of that. You want the whole bean. You want to ground it yourself. A grinder only costs you $15, $20, maybe $25. Don't go for the expensive $250 Jopper Maju. Don't go for that thing. You want to just get yourself the cheap one. If you decide later on, after that one, your inexpensive one breaks, that you want to get a big, nice, fancy one, then do it. But do not ever start off with a big, expensive one. Go for the cheap one. You can find them at the bulk stores. I promise you, grinding your own coffee right before you drink it is the best thing you can do for your cup. If you don't do anything else in my list of 7 things, make sure you grind your own. Get whole bean and grind it right before you roast it. All right, so that's the first thing, number one. The second thing, got my list. The second thing is look for the roasting level. Well, first of all, you can't see this, but right there it says whole bean coffee on this counterculture bag. It tells me it's whole bean. The second thing you're looking for is roast level. Is your roast level. That's going to tell you how much time the coffee spent in the roaster. Whether it's a very lightly, what they call blonde roast, which is in coffee terminology, that is before the first crack. Then you have what's called city or medium roast, which is about first crack-ish. Then you have full city, which is a lot closer to second crack. And then you have espresso roast, which is past second crack, and it's what I refer to as burnt, because it's just burnt garbage. Most of your things like Starbucks, yeah, okay, so these people who have these big warehouses and they just roast tons of coffee and they just stack it in there, the only way it tastes anywhere near like what it does out of the roaster when you get it into your pot 2 months later is if it tastes nothing but charcoal. If you want to actually taste coffee beans, you don't want it that dark. You want it closer to a city roast, maybe full city. That's as far as you want to go. You do not want to go into a dark. That's just all that is you've taken a really good coffee bean, if you bought a good coffee bean, and you've just burnt it. It's really, all you're going to get is charcoal flavor. So don't do that. Go for a city or a full city. That's a medium roast. Now this particular bag right here does not have on it whether it's city, medium, full city, burnt, blonde, but on the tag on the shelf when it was sitting there, it did say it was a medium roast. So I wish it said on the bag, but it doesn't. So here's a really, really important one. Number 3 is a really, really important one, and this is when was it roasted? You see, coffee goes stale pretty quickly, and that's one of the reasons I tell you you want to grind your own beans. You see, beans will start going stale, whole beans will start going stale after it's roasted, about 2 weeks after it's roasted. So after about 2 weeks, you start losing some flavor. However, if it's ground, you got about 15 minutes. That's right. Usually if you're buying the ground stuff, it was stale before it was ever sealed up in that jar or can or whatever you got going on there. It's just flat and dead. But this stuff, this whole bean, it's going to stay fresher longer. So you want to know when it was roasted on. Now that's one of the things that drew me toward this counterculture. It actually does tell me on here. I don't think you're going to be able to focus in if I can even get it lined up. How does that work? There we go. Yeah, it's too fuzzy. I don't think y'all can see it from there. It says roasted date, and it tells me the date, and it was only like 2 days before I bought it off the shelf. So I'm good with that. Actually, I think it was closer to 3 days before I bought it off the shelf. But you want to roast it on date because you want to know when it was roasted. You want to know how long ago, because if it says 3-4 months ago, it's not any good. It's just as bad as buying the pre-ground stuff. It's dead and it's flat. So you want to go for something that has a roasted on date so you know that it's fresh. All right, number 4. What is a number 4? Where was it roasted, or what location? Why is this important? Because it goes back to the thing about when it was roasted. This is a good way to check to see if the people are lying. I hate to say that people lie when they're putting labels on their bags, but they lie. One time I went to get some coffee and I picked up the bag and it said that it had been roasted yesterday, and I thought, wow, so these must be people that are pretty close to us, right? I live on the Gulf Coast, and I thought, so these people must be somewhere near me here on the Gulf Coast. Turned it over, looked at the location of the company, and it was all the way in Northern California. And I thought to myself, there's absolutely no way that coffee got from Northern California. They roasted in Northern California, put it on a truck, and shipped it down here to the Gulf Coast in 24 hours, less than 24 hours, to get it on the shelf. And that didn't happen. So I knew that the little sticker on there, they were lying to me. I didn't buy it. One won't trust them on anything else. So make sure you look for that just so you can compare and make sure they're telling you the truth on how fresh it is. All right, number 5, the flavor description. This is kind of interesting one because people like to put all kinds of stuff. You can see this flavor description on this hologram. See if I can get it up there. It says it's fruity, milk chocolate, and syrupy. So that kind of gave me an idea about what I'm going to be tasting when I drink the coffee. And they didn't lie. This is, I gotta say this about the hologram. It says on here on the back, it tells me, I thought it said something right here. It doesn't, it must have been on their website that I read it. Oh, no, here it is. It says, hologram is our update of the classic mocha Java flavor profile. So if you know how a mocha coffee or Java coffee tastes, which is coffee that is grown on the island of Java, then you kind of have an idea there what they're talking about. It says, fruit-forward and chocolatey coffees combined create something distinctly complex. Now, I've had this for several days now, and I can promise you fruit-forward, they ain't lying. This has a massive fruity flavor to it. The chocolate part, I'm not tasting that too much, but I definitely got the fruit out of it. You won't have to have a refined palate to taste that fruitiness in this thing at all. So, to tell them the truth there, I like that. So, you can be able to discover, you might not end up liking fruity coffees. I don't particularly care for them too much. I like the thicker, heavier, chocolatey ones. But you're going to know when you see fruit, if it's fruity flavors on there, then once you get an idea what that means, like by trying this Counterculture, who is not a sponsor, by the way, but if you find another one that says it's fruity or fruit forward, try that. See if you like it. It's got, what that means is it has some flavors on the tongue, on the palate that taste a lot like fruit. It's very acidic, and it activates the same taste receptors and smell receptors as many fruits do, especially the blackberry, the very acidic types of fruit. Blueberries has a lot of that flavor into it. So, and I've had some that are very chocolatey. They taste very much like mocha, and I really like them. Those are some of my favorite. So make sure you look on the bag and see what they think the coffee is going to taste like, and that way you have an idea before you ever buy it whether or not it's something you're going to like. All right, so now that's number 5. Number 6. Number 6. Where were these beans grown? This is actually a pretty big deal if especially if they don't have a description, or even if they have a description, if you know how beans grown in different parts of the world taste. Believe it or not, there's only 2 different species of coffee that we drink, the Arabica and the Robusta. The different flavors come in it not through different species, but through different places. You see, coffee, the same species of coffee grown on one side of a mountain in Peru can taste different from the same species of coffee grown on the other side of a mountain in Peru, or at different levels. Ones grown lower in warmer weather taste different than ones grown higher in colder weather. It's just really weird, but coffee is very, very sensitive. It's similar to wine in many respects as far as the flavor profiles in coffee go. So if you know anything about, if you're a wine person, then coffee reacts the same way. Your body reacts to coffee the same way. Your tongue, your palate. There are so many different flavor complexes in there. And this particular one tells me right here on this sticker on the back, again, I don't think you can see that, but there it is. It says that it's 75% from, it's Spanish, and I can't do Spanish, so I'm not going to read it, but in Colombia. So 75% Colombian, which is probably where they get the fruitiness out of it, and then 25% out of Ethiopia. Now, I'm a big fan of Ethiopian coffee. I know those happen to be very chocolatey in flavor, so I think that's where the chocolate part comes out. So this tells me exactly where it's grown. What's good about that is that you can look on ones that tell you where the coffee is from, and if you have tasted that before, you have a good idea about when you see other coffees that are from the same region, kind of what they're going to talk about. Ethiopian coffees are going to be a lot more chocolatey than the Colombian coffees are, but the Colombian coffees are going to be a lot more acidic and bold in your mouth than the Ethiopians. It's good to know these things. That way when you're looking at the front of it, you know what you're talking about. You know what you're going to get in your mouth. Now, before we go to number 7 and finish this off, I want to give you 2 things that are completely not important. 2 things that a lot of people, they might look at in coffee and say, well, I don't want this coffee because of this thing. All right, 2 things that are completely unimportant to coffee, and they both go along with the packaging. The first thing that's unimportant is how pretty and colorful the packaging is. Listen, Coffee is a cutthroat business. There are a lot of people out there who have coffees, and they're trying to attract your attention. Coffee is huge. It's a billions of dollars a year. I got a bee buzzing around my head, thinks I'm a flower. It's billions of dollars a year industry, and there are people trying to suck up as much money out of that as possible. And a great way to influence you, the consumer, without actually having to do anything special, is sink a little bit of money into pretty packaging. And so a lot of times you'll see a coffee on the shelf, man, it'll be right next to be some dull thing, maybe like this is kind of matte colored, right? It's pretty, right? It's got some purple. If you like purple, you're going to like this. It's purple and white, but it's matte colored. It's not shiny. Kind of blends in with everything else on the shelf. Well, then you got one sitting right next to it. It's all shiny and bright primary colors, and it just draws your eye to it. And people are going to tend to buy that one simply because of the bag. Don't do it. So here's my philosophy on just about anything packaging. If the shinier and prettier the packaging is, then the less impressive the inside is, what you're actually getting. You end up paying more for the pretty packaging than you do for what you're actually getting inside. I think it's just a way for people to raise their prices, because we consumers will buy it for whatever reason. Oh, it's a nicer package, I'm going to buy that. Now with coffee especially, you're going to look for things that a small roaster isn't going to want to spend the money on packaging. They're interested in making a great product. People who are interested in making a great product want the product to speak, not the packaging. So don't necessarily go for the big, pretty coffees. Look for ones that are just kind of sitting there, have these 7 attributes that we're talking about, and don't look for the packaging. Okay, the second thing you definitely don't want to look for is completely unimportant is if you see one that's kind of poofed up. Here, let me see if I can. If you see one that kind of looks, well, that didn't work too well, but you know what I'm talking about. Let's see. It's all poofy. The reason you shouldn't worry about that is that coffee hey, it got kind of poofy on me. Coffee does what they call off gas. What that means is after it roasts, it starts releasing all these gases. The chemical reaction is still going on, and all these gases are starting to be released from the coffee. If you notice, most coffee bags have a little thing right there. It's a one-way valve, and that one-way valve lets those off gases come out of here, escape. You kind of squeeze it, it'll slowly go down. Why? Because that valve is letting those gases escape. But that valve, that's pretty expensive, actually. In fact, I used to own a coffee roasting business, if y'all didn't know, and these valves can cost as much as the entire rest of the bag. So that's a pretty big price jump to put these valves on here. So if you see somebody, so you see a coffee that's sitting there, and it's not all that pretty, it's kind of bland, and maybe it's just a brown paper bag, and it's got no valve on it, it's kind of swole up a little bit, like, you know, it ate way too much broccoli last night or something. That's not a bad coffee. In fact, that coffee is probably better, a lot better than some of the other stuff you're going to see around. And you might get that kind of bag, not so much at a grocery store, but you might get it at a specialty coffee shop, because they're either roasting their own, or they got some person who's roasting it out of their home, out of a small business, and they just don't have the overhead to sink into fancy, pretty bags. They're too busy trying to make a great product. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about how pretty and colorful the bag is, and don't worry if it's a little overinflated. Coffee does that. It's not going to hurt anything. All right, so those are 2 things you should not worry about. Let's go on the last thing, the number 7 that you need to worry about. We've talked about that you need to look for whole bean and grind it yourself always, 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 always. Second, find the roasting level you like, somewhere between city and full city, right there in the medium dark range. Then you're going to need to know when it was roasted. Coffee goes stale quickly. Make sure yours is as fresh as possible. Where was it roasted, so you know that they're not lying to you on the date it was roasted on. The flavor description. Get an idea about what you're getting into. If you like fruity flavors, you're going to want to look for one that's a little bit, says it's acidic or it's fruity on it, because that's going to give you that sort of thing. If you don't, you want to stay away from those. Where were the beans grown? That gives you a better idea about what you're talking about. Right, with me, I love Ethiopian beans. If I see Ethiopian beans on the bag, I'm more likely to buy that bag of beans because I love Ethiopian coffee. All right, number 7, and this is the big one, and this one you can't actually do in a store. This is one that we've kind of hinted at all along. It's not something you can test in a store. You have to test this at home, and the test is this. Do you like it? Is it taste good to you? If it tastes good to you, then buy it. Then go back to it. If it doesn't, don't. Keep searching. Here's a really good tip. Try and find local roasters. And I mean that as local to you as possible. I recently found out that in the nearest big town to me, nearest big city, there is a roaster there. And I want to try some of their coffee. But I also found out that the small town, one town that way, also has a local roaster. I am really interested in trying both their coffees, especially the small town guy. He's just starting up, only been going a year. He was on the news, so people finding out about him. He's doing smart on that. And so I want to try these two local. Maybe I'm hoping I like one of those better than I like something from California. You know, this counterculture is from California, and I'm willing to support them. But I'd much rather support somebody here local to me. So find out what you like. But if neither one of those roasters do stuff that I like, I'm going to go back to something I do like. And you should be doing the same thing. Find what you like. Don't be afraid to test out new coffees. Put your foot in the water. But definitely, once you find it, you know what your go-to coffee is going to be. All right. So that's my 7 tips. Right there on how to make sure you have great coffee in your house at all times. So now, since I'm going live, I might as well see if I got any questions or comments. I doubt it. I didn't announce this too far in advance, but let's see if I got any on here. I don't, so that's good. We don't have to worry about answering questions. And I lost my list. Gotta have my list. Got it upside down again. If you're watching this on the replay, instead of watching it live, if you're watching on the replay, and you have any questions or comments, go ahead and put them down in the comment section below. I will come back and I will answer them as soon as I possibly can. I thank you all for coming to class today. I hope you learned how to make sure you get coffee that you love, coffee that you're going to enjoy, you and your family are going to enjoy. And I hope you all have a great week. God bless. Class dismissed. Now I have to try and figure out how to stop this.